and it was beautiful. Um, yeah, going from thinking that you lost everything to getting it back. Um, yeah, very strong, very strong memory in my life. Probably one of the strongest ones. Um, but yeah, they made it. So, their story is incredible. They had just gotten home from school, and they were all together in the same room talking about their day. And this doesn't normally happen. They usually split up once they get home. And they were all together when the earthquake started, and they could hear it like coming down, pancake, pancake, super loud. And the wall broke open next to where they were standing, and they jumped out. And they're on the side of a mountain, so they're tumbling down the mountain. The house is tumbling behind them. Uh, they spent the night in a tree. Immediately after the earthquake, looting started. Um, Prisons broke open. Bad people escaped. Um, just like opportunists, right? Like you start robbing right away if you can. And also a very dangerous place in general for three women, on their own. So yeah, they spent the night in a tree, and I'm sure they didn't sleep very well up there, but they were up there all night. And then the next day, they caught a ride and got dropped off at my dad's office. So yeah, they definitely shouldn't be alive, at all. Like, yeah, they're a miracle story for sure. But we had to get them evacuated out, get some medical attention for my mom, especially she seemed the most beat up. And the my youngest sister with the eye issues, that was like a temporary thing. So eventually she was able to get all that debris out and see, so she's okay. Um, and everybody's okay now. Like in full retrospect, big picture, everybody's okay. But we got my family to the U.S. Embassy, and it took a while because we had to navigate all the like down power lines and yeah, just figure out how to get there. And the air was it the Air Force? Yeah, the Air Force evacuated out like injured Americans. So my whole family had the opportunity to get on a Air Force plane and leave the country. Right as we were boarding, I told my dad I need to stay in Haiti. Um, I'm I'm an asset here. Like I know the country, I know the language enough to get around. I'm an EMT. I'm fire training. I know some search and rescue. This is the perfect place for me. The family's okay. They're in good hands. They're in your hands. They're going back to the US. I need to stay. And my dad said, "You're right. Here's the keys to the car." No discussion. So
You're waiting for him to say no, come with us.
yeah. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna stay then. Um, because yeah, he definitely could have convinced me to come with them, but no, he knew it was the right thing. So then I was on my own in Haiti, and I spent the night at the US Embassy by myself, on the ground, and everybody had to leave their backpacks and their suitcases. They're like, no, you can't take anything, just leave your luggage and get on the plane. So, and everybody was like, yeah, go, take what you need for my stuff because they knew I was staying. So I went through some bags. I made my own bag, some food and some clothes and stuff. And I woke up to somebody like dragging my bag away from me. And I I got up, I went, I grabbed my bag back and I wore it backwards and and I slept on top of it so I didn't get robbed again. Um, but I was tired. Like I did sleep. I got up the next morning, took my dad's car to the World Vision headquarters where I knew some people, and I was like, "Hey, um, I'm I'm here to stay in Haiti for I don't know how long, but I'm here to help." And they're like, "Oh, you're Frank Williams is my dad." He's like, "Oh, Frank Williams' son." So they think I'm like as good as him at everything, and that's like not the case at all. I'm 19 years old at this point, but they put me in charge of a food distribution. And I was like, all right, cool. Let's go hand out some food. And we had these trucks. We went into the city, We start handing out food and supplies. And before long, like within minutes, we're just getting mobbed. Like people were like shaking the car, jumping on top of it, jumping into it, trying to get the driver out. And I was like, oh, we gotta go, we gotta go. So we took off. That like could have been really bad. People die in those scenarios all the time. So we didn't hand out even 10% of what we intended to hand out. And it was also like really dangerous and scary. So we get back to World Vision and I was like, okay, change of plans. We need security. We need an entrance and an exit. We need like an easy escape that's not blocked off. And we'll go do this in like a big soccer field where there's lots of space. So we try again. Same thing happens. And yeah, so we dive in the truck and take off, and I'm like, all right, this isn't working. Like people aren't going to get their food. So I stuck around World Vision a little bit longer, but before long, I met a search and rescue team, and I was like, all right, this is what I want to be doing. Like this is more up my alley. Oh, and I forgot to mention when I was at the U.S. Embassy, LA County's Task Force 2 arrived, and they're like an international search and rescue team. I was very familiar with them because I've been training to be a part of LA County for years. At this point, I'm not hired on by LA County. I am now, but their search and rescue team was like something like that would be like a dream once getting hired to be part of this like elite team one day, like specialized, traveling around the world. Very cool thing to be a part of. And I was wearing a county t-shirt and a county hat. All my other belongings had been lost in the apartment collapse. So I just had the shirt on my back and it just so happened to be county. So Task Force 2 shows up and they see this kid wearing like county stuff in Haiti. And they're like, who the heck? So they come over and talk to me. And I'm like, hey, I'm an explorer. I'm an explorer. I told him my story a little bit and I was like, can I help? Can I like travel with your team? And they're like, no, kid, sorry. We're, FEMA and OFTA and all these like regulating, entities are in charge of us. So there's no leeway. So I was bummed. I was like, oh man. All right. Well, one day I'm going to get hired and one day I'm going to be on that team. And, that I did eventually get on that team once getting hired. So that was a cool full circle thing, eventually, but for the time being, I was still like bitter about not getting to go with the big county team, but a smaller team I got to meet allowed me to go with them. And again, like my contribution was, I know the country, I know the language, like I can help out a little bit, and I was here when it happened.
Weird. Sorry, just to jump in a second, but at that point, it's such devastation. You'd think there was a little leniency to bend some rules. I mean, what an asset. Yeah. You have this understanding. You understand the organization that you're trying to attach yourself to. You speak the language. You've lived there. I mean, I know that seems like a poor leadership decision to not bring you along the first time, to be honest.
Yeah, there's like good local knowledge, and that's something we look for now that I'm on the team. Like I know that that's a valuable thing. But anyway, yeah, it didn't happen for whatever reason, and got to work with a smaller one. And it was like, I think there was like 6 or 7 people of like elite. You got your Navy SEAL and your Green Beret and your pilot and your cadaver dog and your security and your team leader and your paramedic. And then there was me. And, we went around and we just pulled body parts out. Like we didn't find anybody viable, even though there's plenty. We just didn't know where to look. We didn't have the equipment that the big teams had. And I think LA County ended up getting quite a few saves over the course of those couple weeks that they were there. But we didn't. And it wasn't like that part wasn't hard for me. The part that was hard was that the families are there. Like they're with you, like wanting you to save, their family member. And it's kind of like you're a paramedic. It's kind of like when you're doing CPR and the family's there and they're just rooting for you, hoping that you save their loved one, and you can't all the time, you do your best, but you can't. So I think, yeah, that was the hard part at that point in my life, just hearing like the family members crying and like, please, begging you to do your best and not being able to. So yeah, I did that for a little bit. And this is when I started noticing like maybe like some early signs of PTSD for myself. I was having trouble sleeping, and I would wake up like violently hitting stuff, like flailing my arms. Loud noises were starting to become an issue. So yeah, I started picking up on some of that stuff. And yeah, well, I'll talk a little bit more about Haiti and then we can talk about that. So I was in Haiti a couple weeks after the earthquake happened. Like I stayed for a couple weeks longer, and I did the search and rescue team. And then once they left, we had been back and forth to the airport a lot. So
Just to jump in again, because like my observation was trying to get out there and they were already sending people back, and yet you'd see on the news they were finding more and more and more people. To me, it almost seemed like, all right, rotate the teams then, do a pass on, let some of the other teams try and do some more work, but also get experience so they can bring back to the US and apply to the next Oklahoma bombing or, whatever it is. But it was, they just pulled them seemingly really, really soon. You've obviously got a very unique perspective, unbiased. What was, through your eyes, did it seem premature being member of a team now, years later?
Yeah, it did. It definitely did. Because I've felt like I was there longer than anybody. And yeah, it seems like people would come in for a week and then leave. And then I think with like the military, they were there longer. So I mean, not all of them, but at the airport is where everything was getting set up. That was like the base of operations. For every country that sent a military or a relief team. And it was pretty massive. Like, after a couple weeks, there was like flags from like all different countries, flying like over their base, and there were MASH, hospitals set up at the airport, like 3 giant circus tents of, emergency hospitals. So there's a lot going on at the airport, and nothing commercial, but military planes would land, and some private charters would come in, but they didn't have a good reason. The airport was kind of messed up, I think, so it was dangerous to land. And I ended up making friends with some helicopter pilots from Utah, and they were there. They're independently wealthy, just they're on their own dime, flew in 3 helicopters and just wanted to help. And I was like, cool, let me go pitch myself to them and see if they'll take me along, because helicopters sound fun. So I did, told them my story. I was like, yeah, I've been here for a couple weeks now. I was here when the earthquake happened. Can I help you guys? Like, they're like, yeah, we're just trying to do the best good we can with like our helicopters. So the big issue was food wasn't getting out. Food and water was not getting out. It was, as I explained earlier with the riots and trying to distribute food, it's too dangerous. And so the answer to that problem were these helicopters. And we go, and there was just tons and tons and tons of food getting dropped off by all these different aid countries. Like China would come in, dump a bunch of food, and then Russia or whoever, they'd all be just big plane lands, offloads food, takes off. So we go find that food and just take it. Like, it wasn't being protected very, very well. So we essentially just go steal it, load up these helicopters, and fly all over Haiti and drop the food out and do it again all day long. So I was getting tons of helicopter hours, like getting to ride in the back and having the time of my life. It felt like we were being the most effective as far as getting people fed. And And early on, we were landing the helicopters, getting out, offloading really quick, and then getting back in and taking off. That started to backfire on us when people started trying to jump in the helicopter. The same as earlier on in my story, trying to jump in the trucks. So, and that's way more dangerous in a helicopter. Like at one point, I had to jump into the helicopter as it was taking off. Felt like Rambo. And this is after like ripping open a 50-pound bag of beans with like a Rambo knife, like, so I'm running knife in hand, jump in the helicopter. It was cool. So just having the time of my life and feeling like I'm doing really good work at the same time. So we changed our approach, and then we'd start hovering and dumping the food out so that they couldn't get to us, but we could get the food to them. Sometimes we'd even hover over like a river and start like throwing canned goods in the river. It would disperse. People would come out of the woodwork and just start loading up, and people were getting fed. So we did that for a while. That was really cool. We would sleep in the Dominican at night, and they had rented out a baseball field. So they hired security to watch the field, land the helicopters. We'd sleep there at night. We'd be safer. And then we'd fly to Haiti the next day, all day long. So really cool work. Once they left, I went to one of the hospitals and I was like, hey, can I help? I'm an EMT. I just got my national registry card. I was a very new EMT. I just passed all the nationals. And I had actually gone back to the collapsed apartment where my family had been living to see if I could find at least my wallet. And somebody had looted already, and they had found my wallet, took out the money, but like left the wallet. So the wallet was like in the opening, and they had risked, you would have had to like go way deep in there to like try and find it. They had risked way more than I would want to risk to go get my wallet, but got my wallet. It was all beat up. Lots of rocks and stuff had landed on it. Pulled out my national registry card with like dents in it and stuff. And I was able to present that to these hospitals. And they're like, they actually looked it up and stuff. And then they're like, all right, you're a doctor, go help. And so I was able to like get to participate in things that I would never get to do under my scope in the US. But now we're in like emergency medicine, like for real, like it's like a jungle, Wild West stuff. So there's people still getting pulled out of the rubble that are alive at this point. Lots of amputations, lots of surgeries, and then still lots of violence. Like I had mentioned earlier, like the prisons broke open. So there's people getting killed. There's people getting shot. So like we're getting gunshot wounds too. So I'm getting help with this stuff. I'm getting help with the leg amputations. And at one point we took a little kid's eye out because his other eye was going to go blind if we didn't take that one out for some reason. And starting IVs and pushing drugs, all that stuff I got to learn how to do. So that was really valuable for me. And in those settings, nobody would tell you to stop. Like nobody would tell you to go take a break or anything like that. It was just a non-stop 24/7 around the clock. As much as you could handle and as much as you could do, you did. And then you go take a nap on the cot, eat an MRE, get back at it. So people were getting burnt out quick, and I could see the quick turnarounds at the hospitals. Like new doctors and nurses and medics would come in almost every day, and then the old ones would leave. And I was there about a week, and it seemed like after that week, I had the most seniority, and I was in charge of my own little orthopedic tent of patients, and I would like check all their IVs and make sure they were good and get them fed. And then I felt like I was getting burnt out too. So I'm like, all right, cool. I felt like I helped a lot. I learned a lot, but I need to like move on to the next thing. And I did one more thing before I left Haiti, and that was I got involved with a rubble removal team, and they were getting clean water. Like they were digging up wells. So a lot of wells got covered up, so people weren't getting access to water. So we'd go and get the rubble out and by hand and give these villages like their clean water again. So got to do that. And then after a couple of weeks, I was like, you know what? I think I should go home now. Like there's always gonna be work to be done, but I felt in my heart that it was time. So I lost my passport in the collapse. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a phone. Like I had no way of getting home practically, but I just trusted my heart and my gut, and I went to the airport. And people were telling me like, "Oh, there's no way you're gonna get out." Like people have been trying to leave the country, for weeks. They're like camped out on the tarmac right now. I was like, I know, but I'm just gonna see what happens. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna walk. So I walked in, walked past security, didn't get stopped. Just kept walking all the way through the whole airport till I got to the tarmac. Didn't get stopped the whole time. Got out on the tarmac. There were tons of people just like in their tents and with their luggage and sleeping bags, and they'd been living out there trying to get home. And there are planes coming and going and like little private charters and stuff, but how do you get on one of those? That's the big question. And within 20 minutes, somebody approached me and they told me, "Hey, we have one extra seat on our plane. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't have any money." They're like, "No, it's okay. You don't have to pay. We felt like we should come talk to you." I'm like, yes, I want that seat on that plane. So within like half an hour of getting to the airport, I was on an airplane.
That's quicker than now. You have to go through
Yeah,
TSA
it's quicker
and
than
take your
now.
shoes off.
Way quicker than now. So I wish that happened every time. But it was a very small plane. So it takes off. It takes us to, was it Bahamas, I think, is one of the islands on the way back to the States. So it takes us to Bahamas, refuels, and then lands in Florida. I have no idea what even city we're in. No phone, no way to like do anything. Oh, and as we got off the plane, they're checking people's passports
Mm-hmm.
and customs and stuff like that. And I don't have any of that stuff. One sec. But I'm like, well, I got this far. I'm just gonna one foot in front of the next and see what happens. I was last in line intentionally. I didn't want to hold up the line if there's an issue. And they didn't ask me for anything. And I just walked past them.
Really?
Yeah. So there's obviously like a path being paved for me to get home. And I get out of the airport. It's starting to rain. It's nighttime. And I look around. I see somebody with a phone, and I ask if I could use their phone. They said yes. And I called my dad. I was like, "Hey, I'm alive. I made it back to the States. I'm in Florida somewhere. Can you get me home?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll order you a ticket." And I don't think I went and saw them. They were in Connecticut. I think I just went back to California. And yeah. So the next day, he's like, "You need to get to this airport." I forget which one it was, but he's like, "You need to get to this airport." And I was like, "Okay." And there's like a bus loading up. So I get on the bus. I don't even know where it's going. And it turns out it's going the right direction, an hour to where this other airport is. So I get close to that airport that night. At that point, I'd made some friends on the bus, and they're like, "Oh, you can like sleep on my hotel room floor tonight if you want." So I did that. The next morning, I'd take a free shuttle to the airport, give them my tickets, get on the plane, get back to California, like with no money. It was crazy. No money, no ID. So yeah, so I made it back to California, and that's when I started my nonprofit organization. I felt like I should continue to like I knew I got a second chance. In my heart, I wanted to continue helping Haiti. So I started, it's called Firm Foundation. It's spelled FIRME, and it means strong or solid in the Creole language. So Firm Foundation, and the mission was to build houses for earthquake survivors. And we built 39 houses so far at this point, but it's been slowed down a lot just because it's so dangerous right now in Haiti to be able to do anything. But that's how I was continuing to help out. would love to go back soon, but I can't.
Well, hopefully something pivotal will happen. I think I saw somewhere that one of the African nations was thinking of sending troops to try and stabilize it, and I'm assuming it was probably one of the French, colonies in Africa, but I'm not sure. I just remember seeing a headline. Well, firstly, I mean, that's the most comprehensive story of that event that I've heard yet. I've had people that were there, USAR members. I've had a nurse, military nurse, who was on a ship off the island of Haiti, and they could only have,
The
who they were brought.
Mercy ship, I think, was out there.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was. But to have that perspective, and then obviously you end up being in that exact USAR role yourself years later, is incredibly powerful. I want to walk through your fire service story next so we can get to the tools. But before we do, so many traumas at this point. How did you and your family, how were you able to process these traumas? And then talk to me about your faith as well, because obviously, you're missionaries, there's a deep rooted faith, but a lot of times when there's horrors and things, it must cause that faith to be questioned. God, how could you let this happen? So kind of walk me through the emotional and spiritual journey from 2010 through to today.
Okay. Yeah, those are good questions. Whenever my family would say like, hey, we're thinking about moving to Africa or Haiti, or there's other countries that were considered, I always trusted God. Like, God's going to take care of us. He's never let us down. And yeah, these are super dangerous countries sometimes. And our friends and family usually didn't approve, especially bringing like kids to these places. But in my heart, I was like, no, God's going to take care of us if he wants us to go there. And that's why I didn't believe when my dad told me like nobody's alive in the apartments. I couldn't believe that God would let something happen to my family when he called them to be there. I was like, no, there's just no way. And so the point where it really seemed like they had died, that rocked my faith a little bit, and I didn't understand. And it was just for a brief moment, but it was almost like my theology unraveled for a sec. And but come to find out, he did take care of them. So that it made it even stronger, reinforced it. Like, God's like, you needed to trust me, And so yeah, that's I guess the spiritual aspect of it. And if you're listening to this podcast from like spiritual, like if you have a faith that you believe in and stuff, you can pretty clearly see like God had his hand in this journey that I went through and that my family went through. If you're not religious, it just seems like an incredible story. Maybe unbelievable, but yeah, it happened, and I don't think it would have happened without God's hand in it, keeping us safe and sparing my life, sparing my family's life. Me getting to Haiti a few days before the earthquake, being in the right place at the wrong time, and all that stuff. Like, there's so many little things that add up. You're like, oh, there's no way that was all coincidence, As far as dealing with the trauma goes, I think I dealt with it better than my family did. My family got whisked out of Haiti right away. Didn't have time to process like I did. I got to stay in Haiti for a couple additional weeks, and things started to like make sense more in my brain, and I was able to like rationalize why some stuff happened and why, just I answered some questions for myself because I was seeing it firsthand, where there's a lot of unanswered questions for my mom and my sisters. Just like something crazy happened to them, and now they're in Connecticut, in like first world country, being taken care of and recovering, and culture shock. Even if nothing had happened, it's always a culture shock going from Haiti to the States. On top of that, with the nonprofit that I started, I began speaking at colleges and fundraisers and everybody. I was telling my story to everybody, just raising awareness, raising money. People wanted to hear the story anyway, and that's therapeutic. Um, and I don't know how many hundreds of times I've shared my story now, but it's been a lot. But it has to be for the right reasons. Like there's guys on my shift who probably haven't even heard my story, and I've been at my station for 8 years. Um, it'll come up over a cigar and one-on-one sitting out front, maybe if the opportunity presents itself and stuff. But I'm not like, I don't just jump to like tell you how cool my life is or anything like that. um I just, I'm just me. So, but that being said, it really helped me process. It really helped me process. I did go to a therapist a little bit initially, just because people wanted to make sure that I was okay. They're like, yeah, get your head checked, make sure there's nothing here lingering that could creep up on you later. And I did, and it seemed like everything was okay. Like all the checks and balances were there. I was processing in a healthy way. I was still like very motivated, fitness oriented, eating right, talking about my story, trying to make lemonade out of lemons. This bad thing that happened, how can I make something good come from it? And I was. And meanwhile, my family was just kind of stuck in a rut for a little bit. Lots of therapy, treating medical complications for years. And they're good now, but it took them a lot longer to kind of get through it. And they eventually started a music ministry for Haiti, where people would donate instruments. They'd take the instruments down to Haiti. They'd put on a music camp, teach the kids some songs. They get to keep the instruments, and they do that about once or twice a year. So that eventually ended up being one of the ways that they gave back and was also therapeutic for them.
Beautiful. Actually, I forgot until we started talking. My first wife, my son's mother, her grandfather started a orphanage in Haiti as well. And I don't know, if it's still going now, but I totally forgot about that. That was another connection I had with Haiti, years ago. It's interesting because there's lots of people on here that have really struggled, especially when they get into our profession. They start seeing the things that we see, and they get sleep deprivation and all the other compacting, amplifying elements of maybe what's already occurred earlier in their life. But there's some people that do well. And I've said this before we hit record, I've said this. I had, quite a few things happen when I was young, but I think why I was just so lucky, and this is purely, a life roulette win. That's it. I mean, I haven't done anything special at all, but I grew up on a farm. I grew up in a large family where we ate together and made fun of each other. Had all kinds of people walk through the door, from extended royal family through to, travelers, gypsies. Watched my parents be very kind. My dad was a veterinary surgeon, so he was healing. I was around blood and guts. So I think, again, there was enough good to offset the bad and help me process it. You obviously, when we've listened to the story for over an hour and a half now, have got some very significant events that one would say, oh, well, you must have PTSD. And you talked about showing the signs, but then it sounds like the ability to become a rescuer, become a fixer, and part of the solution was healing for you. Talk to me about, if that observation is right, but also then we talked before we hit record about some of the people you've lost in your department, because one of the biggest mistakes that we make is we compare trauma. Well, I was never at the Haitian earthquake, and Trevor's fine. So what the fuck is wrong with me? Why am I such a pussy? Well, obviously it's way more complicated than that, and especially the formative years before you put on the badge has a big part of it. I was from a very loving, strong, family. Clearly you were, because you literally navigated the planet helping other people as well. So what is your observations of why you're okay? And then let's talk about some of the people that you have lost and the mental health element in your department.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was the realization I had as a young teenager the first time I lived in Haiti to either you got to accept death or you're not going to have a good time. You're going to live in fear and it's going to be crippling. Um, so that early on realization, along with being exposed to some of that trauma even before the earthquake, um, seeing dead bodies and gunfire and whatnot, and being able in that mindset, being able to be like, this is how it is. This is how it is. Like it wasn't me today. Cool. We're gonna keep moving forward. And that's a tough mindset. Like not many people grow up like that. And I think it can really be devastating for the wrong person. Either you enjoy it, which isn't good, and you turn into like a killer or something, or it just ends up creeping up on you and you just break out of nowhere. I think those are kind of the two bad reactions to that mindset. But that didn't happen to me, fortunately. And then later, I was able to reflect on like, well, this isn't the worst thing that has ever happened to me, so I'm okay. I've dealt with worse. And my worst day on a scale from like most other people's worst day is like way different, right? So we respond to emergency calls and somebody got their coffee order wrong and they're having a mental breakdown, right? That's like their worst day, and it's comical, but maybe, they lived a really blessed life, whereas somebody else's worst day, like they had a family member killed or something, or their dog got hit by a car. These are all different different scales of bad things that can happen that people may or may not have experienced yet in their life. So I think what allowed me to be a level-headed emergency responder was the spectrum of what I've already experienced and having processed that in my own way, and for long enough to know that I am okay. I think there's lots of different ways to process trauma, and there's good ways, there's bad ways, and then there's like clinically studied ways. Go to therapy. That's a pretty well accepted way to process, and some people need one session, some people need 10 years. I don't know. So I think everybody is different, but I know that for me, what I did worked, and it's helped me in the career that I've chosen. So there's that.
Would you
Just
would you feel like you had security, even though you were moving to different dangerous countries? Did you feel secure in your family unit? Because it seems like a lot of men and women that I know, that I've got to speak to, so we didn't lose, we almost lost. There was definitely that, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Security is the first thing. Like you were saying with trying to give food, you can't give food if people keep bum rushing the truck. And so whether it was being around addiction, whether around sexual abuse, whether in a foster system, whatever it was, there's not that family unit that you're part of that, whatever happens in the planet Earth, at least you've got them.
Yeah, no, we had a really strong family, a tight family, because we were all that we had. Like no matter where we went, we had to rely on each other. And I think after the Haiti earthquake, even more so. Like you don't know what you have until you lose it. And then I was able to get it back. So that like really like instilled value even more than I already valued my family, but even more so, having to think about not having them anymore and then getting them back is just, oh my gosh, like I think about it every day still, and this happened over 10 years ago. So yeah, we had a tight family. We all live different places now, but we talk almost every day, at least text, so. And actually, since this new baby has arrived, everybody has flown out to visit, all my family members. So That's been nice.
Brilliant. We'll contrast that then to some of the people that you've lost in your department. I mean, I do this thing here at the 343 Hero Challenge every year. I've told this story on here before, but I've done it for, I think it's 9 years now. The first year I had 6 names of people who'd lost, and it wasn't just mental health, it was the cost of the job. And I just did it this September and I had 92 names on my back. So I haven't met a department, I haven't had a conversation yet with someone who hasn't at least lost someone in their atmosphere to overdose or suicide.
Yeah. So my department is pretty big. We have almost 200 fire stations and over 3,000 firefighters. And so like stuff happens to everybody, right? That statistically, like people are gonna die, get married, have kids, divorce, whatever. It's just such a huge active family that things are bound to happen, right? But when somebody dies, it's a big deal for any department, and we take it very seriously. We have a team that's like the funeral team and stuff like that, because it's just such a like we want to honor those people the best that we can and respect the families the best that we can. And my department does a really good job of doing that. So when there is a funeral, like we all try and go. You're either working or you're at the funeral. That's the right way to approach any funeral as a firefighter. And then there's obviously like not everybody can go because maybe you're on a trip you planned a couple years ago and you're in Africa and like you just people understand, but you try and be there. And it seems like I'm at a funeral at least once a year, sometimes more than once a year. And sometimes it's like a line of duty death where somebody dies in a fire. But more often than not, it seems like it's suicide related. And a lot of them don't even get talked about. Like some of them, it's just like they try and cover it up a little bit, or they treat it like it wasn't a suicide, and still try and honor that person. But it's weird. The fact that this happened, it seems like it happens so often, and it's really hard to catch. Like, I was listening to your last podcast with the fellow from he was on a task force too as well.
Yeah, Timmy Gleason.
Yeah, Timmy Gleason, and he had it all planned out, right? And somehow his captain got involved and saved him. Like that's really cool. Really cool that somebody would be heads up enough to, one, recognize that, and two, take action. And that was like an intervention, brought the crew over, everything. So really, really neat. It seems like our lives move so fast. It's really easy to overlook those little details or those signs that somebody's not doing well. And or you notice it, but you don't give it the respect it deserves. And then some people are really resilient fighters, and you'd never think that they would have an issue. And other people that seem like they are struggling are the fighters, and they're like, you can't kill them, So I guess I'll share a story that I've never talked about, and I want to be sensitive about it and honor him the right way. But there was a guy who was on my he worked at my station for a number of years. We worked together, and he to describe his personality, he was the last guy that you would think would have an issue. Hard worker, entrepreneur, always had like 10 things going. It seemed like the most successful business guy outside of being a firefighter, like on the side stuff, like most successful business guy that I knew in the fire service. And had a wife, was about to have his first kid, like weeks from having his first kid, and he kills himself. And like really shocking to all of us, and devastating. Like, what do you do with that? Like, how could that have been prevented? And I know that if you had asked him, there's something wrong, I don't think he would have said anything. I think he would have been like, no, no, it's cool, dog. Like, I'm good. You know, that was just his mentality. Like, he's always like, he doesn't need help. He's good. Like, he's doing great, all that stuff. So yeah, how do you, that raised the question, like, how do we recognize this in the future? How can this be prevented? And it's really tough. Like, I know like there's been programs put in place now to, it's like preventative maintenance type stuff. So I do think that's important and to be aware of it, but I don't know. Like, I'm still at a loss, to be honest.
A few of the things, I mean, obviously I've been doing this for 7 years now, so I'm just a big sponge of all these incredible people stories and, literally leaders in their field in all these different disciplines. But a few things that really resonate with me. Firstly, from "It's the last guy I would have thought it was." A number of times I've heard that. And I always point out, if you and I went on a TC right now, and people were entrapped and we walked up to the car and went, "Oh, fucking hell, that looks awful." It's not very professional. So you wear your mask for your job. You know what I mean? I mean, physically and proverbially. But the problem is, as you said, we're just so overworked and tired that people won't take that mask off and be, vulnerable and say, "Man, I remember I had a 3-year-old decapitated in a car, and I had a 2-year-old at home." And I wrote about it in my book, and it was one of those things where actually my crew was amazing. Like, we all responded, and I was on a truck company. We were supposed to go back and extricate the body, and my captain and engineer DFO'd us, me and my partner, and we had the same time on, only like 2 years in the fire service, something, 3 years. And he's like, "You're going to see enough horrible shit in your career. You don't need to see that." And they were both about to retire, and they ordered us to stay at the station. They went, cut the body out. And so we wear that mask, but taking it off and allowing some of these calls to bother you, they should bother you. That shouldn't happen to a 3-year-old child, So you've got that. Another huge warning sign that none of us talk about is busyness. If you have got demons, if you just sign up for all the OT, or you have a side business and you're constantly doing that every waking hour, it might be that you're just grinding and you're just, working towards purchasing a home, whatever. But you also got to take a step back and go, is this person really being present? Are they really being with their family, or is it escapism? And we don't ever think of, work overtime as a negative coping mechanism, but it can be. And as far as one of the solutions, I worked for 4 departments, 4 hiring processes. That was 3 polygraphs, 4 psych tests. And I realized that we're just doing it completely wrong. The money is already there. Polygraph is smoke and mirrors bullshit, just to get you to confess something that you've done. The psych test, I know now from numerous psychologists and psychiatrists, was never, ever meant to be a standalone test to find out if Trevor or James are going to be good firefighters. It's just not. It's not designed for that. It's designed for forensic psychology with a gamut of other tests. So rather than doing that, how about when we hire someone on and they got probation and they got academy, why don't we give them 6 counseling sessions, knowing that all of us are going to have traumas that we bring into the job? And I think that's the real piece that we're missing. Of course, there's some horrible calls and they should haunt us. And I've said this before, and you talked about it in your story. I think it's the people that are left behind that really haunt us. It's not the grotesque, macabre, mangled bodies so much as the loved ones screaming after they just lost their person. So you've got that too. But what if we took the money from polygraphs and psych, got rid of those 2, did a background check, did a written test, did a physical test? All right, now you should know if that's a good person or not. And you got a probation to get rid of them if they're not. And then say, all right, we're going to hire, psychologists for our department. And over the next 3 months, we're going to give you 6 counseling sessions. You have an opportunity to offload trauma that you brought in. You deliberately make mental health a priority at the front door with your new hires, and you've removed any barrier to entry. Because if, you know, Steve or Sarah start struggling or they want to tune up, immediately they know, all right, I'm going to go to doctor, whoever, and there's no barrier. What happens is our guys get into crisis. Now they're scrambling and it's an EAP Russian roulette. This provider is supposed to be really good, but they don't take my insurance, or I can't afford this one. And this is a problem we have. So that's just some of the takeaways that I've learned of these ones that fall through the cracks. Is why do we not start looking for them on day one? Not to eliminate them, to allow that trauma to become post-traumatic growth. So just like you with your story, some horrible things that happen actually become a superpower as a firefighter.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all really good points. Especially from someone with your experience. I like that approach. Or yeah, just having like easy access to counseling, where for us, we get a bonus for getting our like physical checkups. So if you don't go do it, like you're leaving money on the table. A couple counseling sessions thrown in there could, I think they would be able to motivate the people that didn't even want to go if there's money involved, like get a 0.5% if you do your session this year, and 1 to 6, like it's up to you, at least do one.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Or make it mandatory. So, again, at the front door, it's normal. You have to do a good department. You have a physical agility test. You have to do it. If you're a ocean lifeguard or a pool lifeguard, you have to research your swim test, your toes, your CPR. Why is it any different? You don't have to talk about anything. You can talk about the weather, but I guarantee you, they'll probably start opening some doors. And as you get comfortable, you'll be like, all right, well, while I'm here, let me tell you about that house fire where there was an efficiency and we dragged the guy out and he was sloughing in my hands. Well, you know what I mean? Just get it off your chest. So there's no downside to it at all.
Yeah, I like that. Now it's just getting departments to adapt policies like that.
Absolutely. Well, we were talking about the length of the podcast. We're already at 2 hours and we haven't even talked about firefighting yet. So let's kind of jump into your journey, but you've got a unique journey. So you've come from the world of carpentry. You've also got a nonprofit building houses on the side. Walk me through the front door of the fire service to when you realized that your background and the skills and the toolbox that you had were very applicable to forcible entry. And then let's walk through to the inception of the Williams Key and beyond.
Cool. So my journey getting hired with the fire department took a long time. I did everything right. I did the Explorer program starting when I was a teenager at 15. Got my EMT, did the classes, did the academies. As soon as I turned 18, I started testing, or started putting in my application. So first one was with LA County, because that's the department that I knew I wanted to be at and I'd been training with. But I was like, I'll work anywhere. So over the next couple of years, I applied to 60 different fire departments. I traveled all over the U.S., Washington, Texas, New York, all the big cities. And it took, I think, like 6 or 7 years to finally get on the job. So I got hired around 26. And it's like, in retrospect, I'm glad it took me that long, because I've seen the young kids get on the job and just get eaten alive. And there's so much life experience that they don't have, that can kind of hurt you as a firefighter. It's better to understand how the world works a little bit more, what it's like to have different jobs, pick up some trades, versus being the 18-year-old who doesn't even have a cell phone or something. Like, how are you? You're not going to be as good as a help. You might end up being more of a burden. Anyway, maybe I'm just justifying the fact that I didn't get hired right away, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm glad for the skills I was able to pick up along the way. So carpentry, and working construction as a carpenter, I treated that job pretty seriously. And in my head, I was a firefighter already, even though I wasn't. And I would throw my ladders the same way I threw them at the fire station. I would flick out my extension cord the way I'd flick out a hose. Um, and then obviously like the etiquette too. I wanted to keep my nose clean, stay out of trouble, all that. So that was going through my head every day, all day, every day until I got hired. Fortunately for me, learning about doors and locks came into play, being like a really valuable knowledge once I became a firefighter, because you go from installing doors to breaking down doors as a firefighter. And once I realized that we were doing it almost every shift, it kind of hurt me because I was like, oh, these doors are so expensive. This is unnecessary. There's better ways. Sometimes there's better ways to get into these doors. And depending on the nature of the call, we don't always have to be like super fast. Like we don't have to kick in every door. We can spend an extra 10 or 20 seconds like fiddling the latch on the lock and maybe not break the door at all. And I also owned other businesses to where I've been broken into before, and I know it costs $2,000 to replace a door. And if this is happening like where it didn't need to, that's just such a waste. Like, and I feel like we're not doing our jobs to the best of our ability if we're leaving, grandma with a security issue and no way to pay for it. So I had made some tools for myself as a carpenter, and I knew how to pick locks and everything involving doors and locks. I had like specialty tools that I either made or acquired and bought to help me be like an efficient door guy. And I started bringing my toolbox on calls because I realized, so the area I work in West Hollywood, there's every type of door and building, and we have high rise there. We have mid rise, we have commercial, we have residential, just any type of door that is out there. Like, I mean, there's thousands, but there's such a range that I usually have a tool that can get into like a door I come across. Last resort being to pick it, which is a specialty skill that not everybody has. I can do it, but it takes more time. So I can almost get into every door without having to do damage if I have enough time. But one tool I would always bring out, which is a tool I made out of framing square and is now known as the Williams key. I was bringing it out all the time, and it was getting us in. And before long, other people saw that, they noticed it. They'd always make fun of me for my tools, but fire service, you get made fun of for everything until it works. And then, hey, that stupid tool you have, you mind making me one? I started getting approached like that. And it takes a while just to make one tool. So I went and sourced a fabricator that could make a small batch. And I was like, yeah, I'll make like 10 or 20 of these things, give them out to my friends, then they'll stop bugging me. No intention on making money, no intention on starting a business. And so I had them made, passed them out. Before long, there was like 100 more people that had seen the tool out in the field working, knew I made it, and wanted one. And I was like, all right, well, the first batch was just like, I gave them away, just to make better firemen out there. And, but now there's a lot of people I don't even know. I'm going to have to like charge them, and I'll make a bigger batch and I'll just charge them whatever. So I did. And after that, it just took off. Everybody wanted one. I was like, oh, shoot. Okay, this is turning into something. So I had them powder coated black so that I could not screen print. So I could laser engrave a logo on them. I came up with a logo, and I've always been like pretty good at design, like Photoshop, branding. I was into, I did some sales for Google at one point before getting hired. So I learned about business and sales and all that stuff. And yeah, I don't know. That's just something that I'm kind of good at. So I was able to make a brand pretty quickly. And I've always liked skulls. I think skulls are cool. So put a skull on there, and it's a keyhole. and I called it the Williams key. And I got somebody to show me how to use a laser engraver, and I started engraving the logo on there. And then people wanted their name on there too. So I left one side blank for somebody's name if they want it. If they don't want it, it stays blank. And that really pushed it. Like the customization, they turned into being good gifts, good way to mark your tool, and affordable enough to where like everybody could like, throw a couple bucks at it and buy one. And I told them like, hey, go make your own. If like you don't have to buy this from me, like that's not the point. Like I want you to be better at your craft. So go make your own if you want, or if not, yeah, I'll sell you one. So that was my approach, and it started growing really fast. Made a website, made an Instagram. People started sending me content of them being Johnny on the spot and getting into doors and impressing their crew. So that's like the perfect product, right? One that makes its own content. So that part was really easy. And then these videos would start going viral and get 1 million views or 3 million views. And then orders would really take off. So it's just been this machine that's been growing and growing and growing. And at this point, I've sold 20,000 of them. And it was the base for like probably 10 other tools that I've made now, where probably nobody wants to buy a wedge for me if they'd never heard of me or the Williams key. But now I have a glow in the dark wedge of the keyhole skull, that people buy, and a lot of other stuff that people buy, and door hangers. So after you make entry and nobody was home, you know that you weren't robbed, but the fire service was there, or the police, and you leave a little hanger with a note. So just little crazy random products like that. Now that the website's full of stuff. So it's been like a crazy journey. And it's really made my life very busy. I like being involved with it as much as possible. I'm able to outsource pretty much everything. Like I've got a warehouse with fabricators. They make the stuff and they powder coat it. And now I don't engrave anymore. Now it gets screen printed, so I don't have to do that part either. And I've got almost 20 distributors now, so they market and package and sell for me. So like I don't have any employees. I'm just kind of the puppet master behind it all. And I love interacting with people. Like I get emails every day and messages like, hey, I was having trouble with this door. Do you mind, telling me what you think about it? Or is the Williams key the right tool for it? Or maybe something else is. And I'm like, yeah, send me videos and photos and I'll help talk you through this door. And maybe there's a better tool out there for you, or maybe you need to break it. Like that's the fun part. We get to break stuff too sometimes. So I'm not against the Halligans, the set of irons, the rotary saw, chainsaw, any of that. I love using that stuff too, but it needs to be warranted.
Well, I mean, I love that whole side of the fire service. One of my friends, Eric Wheaton, has a kind of through the lot class that he does. I'm sure he uses some of your tools. He must do. And actually, I was just at the Brothers Helping Brothers conference speaking in Ohio, and Corey from Crackle was there. And I'm actually on the cover this month, so it's kind of cool. I got to meet him. And,
congrats. That's awesome.
Be there. Thank you. But we actually gave me one of your tools as well. He had a few there. So I haven't a chance to play with it yet. Obviously, I'm not at a department at the moment, so it'd be a bit weird just going to my neighbor's house. But
right.
But it's funny because I can remember a specific call. We got called, and it was an EMS call in one of the hotels at Disney. And their bathroom doors are like solid, steel doors, the steel outside. And so this person sadly had locked herself in the bathroom to take her own life. And we're trying to get in. I'm trying to shoulder it because we haven't got any tools with us. No one told us it was locked in a bathroom that was, exterior door quality. And one of the security guards at Disney was like, do you want to use the card? And he was thinking, like in the movies. And it was so weird because we actually used it. And at that moment, it worked. But going back to spirituality and ghosties, I had the lock turned. And I swear to God that I felt it turned from the inside, like someone opened it and all of a sudden I went in. Now, yes, I'm pushing against the lock and, it could have just given, but it was more than that. It's I've had two really weird experiences, that and another one I wrote about the book, of a guy that was burned. Absolutely, his soul didn't know his body was dead. I mean, it defied all anatomy and physiology, but this was the other one. And so it's weird that that was a kind of like through the lock story as well. But I agree with you 100%. We say, risk a lot to save a lot. All right, house is on fire. I don't give a shit. Halligan, sledge, whatever you need, get that door open. But as you mentioned, well-being check. Ladies probably in the back, deaf as a coot, watching, reading the paper. You don't want to be smashing in a door. So I think that those are such great tools. And I don't think a lot of us, are aware or train enough on those, to have that customer service element. I don't think customer service is going to everyone's house installing smoke alarms. I think that's not what we're supposed to be doing. But customer service is definitely, a back to bed call or a well-being check where you haven't destroyed someone's door and done, more damage than if you hadn't shown up at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the biggest rewarding parts of the role that I'm in now is I get feedback from people with stories of how they use the tool. And there's no way to quantify like how good the tool is doing, out there, because I don't hear like probably even 0.5% of all the stories that are going on, but I'm sure it's being used like right now. There's so many of them out there, like it's being used all day long, for all different reasons, hopefully mostly all good reasons, because it can get into the wrong hands, I'm sure. But the cool stories where I'm like, man, that's what made it worth it, is it's like contributed to like saving people's lives. Like I've gotten feedback from at least 3 different people saying like they were able to prevent a suicide, where they were able to get in time and like pull somebody off the ledge or give Narcan or whatnot, to where if they didn't get in that way, they would have had to have waited longer for the key to show up or the door to be broken down. And then there's we got like a personal experience of mine is it was kind of like a welfare check, and normally we'd wait maybe for the keys of the building manager to show up. Like there's no urgency, right? You show up, I'm like, let me try my tools, open up the door, and there's somebody in full arrest, but viable full arrest. So they had like just gone down, and we were able to make the save. So it's just stories like that make it really worth it.
We had same department. We had Orange County sheriffs upstairs, and then our fire station was downstairs. 2 different departments. Reedy Creek was the station, and the lock had failed, and the cop was locked in the bathroom downstairs in their office. And so we had to break in. And again, understanding the value of the door, I was able, because it didn't have your through the lock stuff, was able just to attack the actual handle itself. So ultimately go back to, a void, and then they could put a new lock in. Yeah. But somewhere around is still his cell phone camera of us rescuing his ass from a toilet. So that's my favorite possible entry story.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. I just got invited to my local police department. So now I have immunity in my city, to like present the tool and everything. And when I was done, they're like, well, can you open the doors in here? And I was like, normally not. Like you guys have like high security doors, like they're really well made and stuff. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll just try one. And it opened, and they were all like, oh, and they were sold on it. I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't even think that was going to work. So it's cool. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, for people listening, where can they find the other tools that you have?
WilliamsKey.com. That's the website. Everything goes through there. Lots of other distributors. I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find other places to buy it. It's all the same to me. Just want to make the world a better place a little bit for first responders. And actually, there's like tons of trades that use it now, like locksmiths, military, real estate, moms that, or families where their kids lock themselves in the bathroom even. So, there's a lot of good uses for it. Just use it responsibly. That's my only request.
Absolutely. Even when I was at Anaheim, one of our guys, I mean, it's funny when you look at it, it just takes someone to take a step back and have a common sense perspective. And, we had all the Jimmy lock stuff for the cars most of my career prior to that, and none of us knew how to use them. They were in a bag in the engine, and no one has shown us how to Jimmy a lock. And then someone's like, wait a second, these tow truck drivers are using this blood pressure cuff looking thingy. why don't we try that? So years ago, this was '05, that we got that. And I was like, this is so bloody easy. You make a hole and then you maneuver the little rod and, put the window down, pull the lock open, whatever it is. So I actually bought when I transitioned out of fire service, I have one in my car. Post fire service, I've let, I think, 3 people into their car just from having the right tool. So it doesn't matter if you're a firefighter, like you said. It might be someone locked themselves out of their house once you confirm it is their house or their car, especially in Florida.
Check their ID.
Yeah, exactly. The police come and they're cuffing you. But it's, to me, when you transition out, you become, a sheepdog in your community, so there are some tools. I have extinguishers and trauma kits and, all kinds of stuff to mitigate whatever disaster I might come across in the car. So, your tool that I have now is going to join my little toolbox. So thank you.
Nice. And then just for your viewers, since there are some visual aspects to this.
Yes. The new video podcast that we have.
There we go. They're not all pink. This is a special edition one, but it shows up best on the camera. So
love it.
Williams key.
Beautiful. Well, I want to say thank you so much. I mean, we wanted to obviously make sure that we talked about the Williams key. That's what you're known for. But to spend so much time going through your earlier years, I think has been amazing. And then to couple it, like you said, with Timmy Gleason, for example, you've got these rescuers and then you've got you, a resident at the time. It's been a phenomenal conversation, and it's a pretty epic childhood that you've had with your family. So I want to thank you so much, firstly for coming on the podcast, but more importantly for the vulnerability and getting to some of those emotions, because that's what grabs people by the throat, and reliving those. I know sometimes it's kind of pulling the Band-Aid off a little bit, but these are the stories that we need to hear. And that particular incident, I mean, that many people died, and a lot of people don't even know that story. You've kind of brought some of those souls back to life for us to revisit. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, you got me to tear up on this one and dive deep, and it was a pleasure being on the show, James. Thank you.